I never forgot the day Mark looked me straight in the eye and called me too sensitive for tech. It was a gray Monday morning in January, and I just walked into Tangent Lab's open plan office carrying my favorite, though slightly battered, thermos mug. I'd spent the weekend coding late into the night, polishing the prototype of Mindease, the mental health check-in tool I dreamed up over coffee and all-nighters during my master's program. I thought I'd be met with excitement. Instead, Mark sneered over his headset. "Sophie," he said, voice loud enough for half the floor to hear, "this is a tech company. Investors don't buy into apps that ask people, 'How are you feeling today?' 10 times a day. We need hard metrics, not empathy." I froze, thermos halfway to my mouth. The hum of keyboards and whiteboard brainstorming seemed to dull around me. Empathy. As if understanding how someone felt could ever be a liability. My cheeks burned. Mindease tracks sentiment over time, provides personalized coping strategies, and uses anonymized data to predict stress spikes in corporate teams. He waved a dismissive hand. "It's fluffy. Save that for therapy sessions, not boardrooms." Before I could retort, our manager called us into the weekly sprint stand-up. I buried my indignation under layers of professionalism, nodded, shared my update about integrating the new sentiment analysis API, and moved on. But every time Mark turned his back, I felt the weight of his words, like gravity pulling me down. That afternoon, I sat in the break room, stirring my midday soup with more force than necessary. My colleague Jamal slid in beside me, peering over my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. I sighed. "Mark, again. He says I'm too sensitive for tech, that Mindease is a waste." I poked at a piece of carrot. "That I'm a therapist, not a software engineer." He frowned. "He doesn't get it. Mindease could be huge. Companies burn out employees left and right. If you can predict stress before it peaks, that's real ROI. I forced a smile. "Thanks, Jamal. I need to prove it." He nodded. "Then let's nail that demo for the board next week. Show them the predictive analytics and anonymized cohort dashboards. Numbers speak their language." I straightened, the small flame of determination flickering back to life. "You're right. Time to put the data front and center." The next 5 days were a blur of late-night coding and visualization tweaks. I overhauled the dashboard, added predictive curves, automated group risk flags, and polished the UI so that a VP could glance at it and instantly see where her team's stress levels hovered. I ran the model against our beta test group of 20 employees by combining daily check-ins with passive data, calendar load, email volume, Slack message length. It predicted a spike in stress 2 days before each person's self-reported anxiety peak with 82% accuracy. I printed out the results on glossy paper for the board meeting. Saturday morning, I lugged my laptop to the cafe down the street, code edited with shots of espresso for fuel. When I finally stepped out around noon, the city looked bright, as if it were egging me on. I texted Jamal, "Dashboard ready. Let's crush it Monday." He replied, "Can't wait. See you then." Monday arrived in a flurry of anticipation. The boardroom was filled with Tangent Labs execs, VCs, and one senior director from a Fortune 500 partner. Mark sat at the head of the table, arms folded, a self-satisfied crease in his brow, as if he'd already won. I took a deep breath, plugged in my laptop, and projected the Mindease dashboard onto the big screen. "Everyone," I began, voice steady, "thank you for your time. Today I'll show how Mindease can reduce burnout costs by identifying high-risk teams before productivity drops." Beneath that title was our beta cohort's data, heat maps of stress, timelines of alerts, and a side chart showing a 40% reduction in sick days for the pilot group that used our recommended interventions. The execs leaned forward. I clicked through, explaining the predictive model, demoing the user journey, even playing a short clip of an employee with identity masked, describing how a daily check-in had nudged her to take a quick breathing break before a critical client call. I could almost see their minds ticking. Sick days cost money, disengaged employees cost money, predictive interventions saved money. When I finished, the room was silent. I braced for Mark's interjection, but instead the senior director cleared his throat. "Impressive work, Sophie. The accuracy is solid, and the ROI projection is compelling. Our HR director is intrigued." He turned to Mark. "Let's discuss a pilot with our North American branch." Mark's jaw slackened. He sputtered out a yes, then turned to me, his tone grudging. "Good job." I nodded, heart pounding. In that moment, I'd heard unsaid. She wasn't too sensitive for tech. She was exactly what tech needed. Weeks later, Tangent Labs announced an off-site corporate retreat for the executive leadership team. It was billed as a strategic alignment and team well-being summit on a lakeside ranch. The invite mentioned mindfulness workshops, but I tucked it into my inbox, too busy with new integrations and partner calls to give it much thought. On Friday afternoon, I abandoned my desk with a sigh of relief. The retreat began that evening. The ranch was a rustic estate, stone buildings, wildflower meadows, the lake shimmering gold at sunset. A hush of pine scented the air. I checked in at the reception, was handed a schedule, and climbed the creaky wooden stairs to my cabin. Inside, a single sheet of paper lay on the bed. Saturday 9 a.m., Mind Ease Workshop with Sophie Langford. I blinked, my name, my tool. The workshop, hosted by the HR director, was scheduled first thing. They'd actually asked me to lead a session. My pulse raced. They'd ditched their original plan of an external mindfulness guru and instead turned to my in-house solution. At 8:45 a.m., I carried my laptop and a stack of workbooks to the main lodge, where executives milled around, coffee mugs in hand. Mark stood near the entrance, fiddling with his tie, looking, if anything, more unsteady than I'd ever seen him. "Morning," he said, voice awkward. "I guess we're doing this." I offered a small smile. "Yep, Mind Ease session in 10. He glanced at the room. VPs, directors, even 2 board members filed into chairs, curious. Then he looked back. "Good luck." I found the clicker, cleared my throat, and clicked play on the Mind Ease intro video. Gentle music, simple animations of data turning into supportive reminders, people pausing at their desks to breathe. The screen transitioned to the live dashboard, real-time sentiment scores for our retreat teams, anonymized, color-coded. "Welcome," I said, voice steady though my heart soared. "I'm Sophie Langford, lead on Mind Ease. Today we'll explore how integrating mental health check-ins can enhance team performance, starting here, in real time." A few eyebrows lifted. Someone whispered, "They built this in-house." I clicked the next slide. Activity 1, Emotional Baseline Check-in. I invited them to open Mind Ease on their phones, complete a quick questionnaire, and watch the dashboard update. The execs whipped out phones, Steve, the CFO, puffing slightly, and Anya, the COO, peering at her screen, even Mark, hesitantly scanning the QR code. Within 60 seconds, 38 responses filtered in. The dashboard glowed, 15% high stress, 30% moderate, 55% low, aggregated by team color. A ripple of murmurs spread. The data was literal, raw, immediate. "Notice how raw data reveals patterns your teams might not share in meetings," I said. "Now let's discuss. What surprises you?" Hands shot up. Ananya admitted she felt higher stress than she'd acknowledged. The CFO confessed he'd been ignoring warning signs in his finance team. Audarbasti, for Centrist, had been ignoring warning signs in his finance team. Mark sat silent, but I saw his face, cramped with unease. We moved to activity 2, Coping Strategy Breakout. I divided them into small groups, assigned topic cards, one on breathing techniques, one on micro breaks, one on peer support prompts drawn from Mind Ease recommendations. Very centrist said, "One to act team and a hadid, and ye ever purchased." They rotated, discussing how they'd implement at the branch level. I circulated, listening. "I didn't realize pausing for 2 minutes could shift focus," murmured the board member. "I might integrate this before every quarterly review," said another. Sweet validation coursed through me every time someone took a workbook page, scribbled notes, and passed it to a neighbor. This was what I'd built for. During the final segment, data-driven action planning, I guided them through exporting the session's average stress levels and projecting how a weekly check-in cadence could reduce burnout leave by 30% over 6 months. The CFO's eyes widened. The COO tapped notes furiously. After 90 minutes, the HR director stepped up. "Thank you, Sophie. That was powerful. We'll embed Mind Ease into our corporate culture, starting today." A round of applause followed. I felt a thrill that hummed in my bones. Very centrist said. Once a blue one, the same company that once scoffed at my empathy app had now made it the heart of their leadership development, and all because I refused to hide my sensitivity. Later that afternoon, I sat on a dock overlooking the lake, legs dangling over the edge, thermos in hand. The sun dipped behind pines, painting the water a molten copper. Jamal appeared, sitting beside me without a word. We drank in silence for a moment. Finally, he said, "You killed it. They're all in." I exhaled, eyes on the horizon. I never thought they'd flip like this. He nodded. That's your secret. Your sensitivity is your strength. You see what others ignore. I smiled softly, thinking of Mark's words, the sting they carried, and how they'd fueled me to build something that laid bare the very essence of empathy. You know, I said, watching a loon skim the water, I think I'm going to build a retreat version of Mindies, one that runs offline, sends reminders on local Wi-Fi, helps teams even in remote locations. Jamal grinned. I'd sign up for that. I chuckled. Me too. After all, sensitivity is universal. He nudged my shoulder. And tech needs more of it. As the last sliver of sun slipped below the tree line, I closed my eyes, letting the evening's calm wash over me. The project I'd once been told was too soft for tech was now the centerpiece of a corporate summit. My sensitivity hadn't been a weakness. It had been the spark that lit the way. Tomorrow I'd return to the office and help Mark update our product roadmap. But tonight I'd savor the sunset, the silence, and the quiet certainty that empathy and technology aren't opposites. They're the best of partners. And as long as I harness both, there's no limit to what we can build. The first light of dawn found me back at my desk in the Tangent Labs office, headphones on, tweaking the offline-capable version of Mindies. The retreat's success had sparked a flurry of requests. Can we pilot this in our remote Alaska facility? What about ship crews? How do we integrate it into our private 5G network? I sipped strong coffee, toggled lines of code, and thought about how far we'd come in just a few weeks. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. Lunch? I owe you a genuine thank you. I smiled. No lectures, no condescension. Truly genuine. I closed my laptop, grabbed my thermos, and headed downstairs. At the cafe across the street, he was already there, holding 2 mugs. He stood, shifting from foot to foot, like a first-date version of himself. Hey, he said quietly. Mindies, the retreat workshop. It really changed things. HR told me turnover notices are down. Overall engagement is up 27% in just 1 month. I set my mug down. That's amazing. Shows the data works. He nodded, staring into his latte, and shows I was wrong. About you, about sensitivity in tech. He paused, then reached across the table. I want to apologize properly this time. I was so focused on metrics that I forgot metrics include humans. I heard the vulnerability in his voice and felt the years of professional tension unwind. Thank you, Mark. That means a lot. He shook his head. I want to do more than say sorry. I want to champion Mindies internally and externally. I've drafted a 3-phase rollout. First, embed check-ins in every project sprint. Next, beta test the offline version you built. Then pitch to our partner network. He leaned forward, eyes bright. Can we do that together? I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Absolutely. Over the next month, Mark became my co-pilot. We met daily for stand-ups, shifting tasks seamlessly. He handled executive buy-in. I wrote code. He built partnership decks. I refined risk prediction algorithms. Our partnership transformed Tangent Labs' culture. Teams began each day with a 2-minute check-in prompt, followed by data-driven insights on collective morale. Project leads, once skeptical, sent me messages. Dashboard saves lives. One Wednesday afternoon, our CTO stopped by my desk. I've reviewed your code for the retreat feature, he said. Offline sync with local Wi-Fi. Genius. Let's open source that module. My heart thumped. Open source meant the world could improve their own well-being apps, share improvements back, and make mental health tech a common good. Thank you, I said, voice shaky. That's exactly what I hoped for. He nodded, eyes warm. Sometimes sensitivity unlocks innovation. 6 weeks after the retreat, I flew to Seattle for the Employee Wellbeing Summit, this time as a keynote speaker. Backstage, I paced in a crisp suit, slides cued. The theme, Beyond Metrics, Human-Centered Tech in the Age of Automation. When my name was called, the roar of applause wrapped around me. I took the stage, heart racing, and shared Tangent Labs' story, how a too-sensitive tool became the anchor for corporate culture, how empathy-driven models cut turnover by 18% in 6 months, and how open-source commitments sparked a community of developers bolstering mental health features across platforms. I paused, scanning faces in the audience, HR directors, tech leads, even a handful of investors. Then I offered our call to action. If tech doesn't serve the whole person, mind as well as machine, then what's the point? The applause that followed felt less like validation and more like a call to arms. Back in San Francisco, I found a package on my doorstep, a sleek, leather-bound notebook embossed with the Tangent Labs logo. Inside, Mark had written, "For our next chapter, Dreamsies." Underneath was a rough outline for a consumer-facing spin-off, journaling prompts, gratitude logs, peer support circles, all built on the same predictive analytics backbone. I loved it. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, Phase 1, MVP for freelancers and contractors. Then I texted him, "Let's build Dreamsies." Within days, we assembled a cross-functional team, engineers, UX designers, a behavioral psychologist, and mapped out our roadmap. I felt the same exhilaration I'd had when Mindease was just a glimmer in my master's thesis. Only now I had Mark's full support, and the knowledge that our combined strengths, his business acumen, my human-centered design, could scale well beyond enterprise. One evening, while reviewing user feedback prototypes in our makeshift living room office, I glanced at Mark. He was deep in thought, pencil tucked behind his ear, sketching wireframes for the Dreamsies mobile app. He looked up, caught my eye, and gave me a small wave. No more ego. No more fluffy tech sniping. Just two creators building something that mattered. I closed my laptop and moved to his side. "You know," I said quietly, "when you first said I was too sensitive, I thought it was the end for me here. But it turned out to be the beginning." He studied me, a soft smile curving his lips. "And now sensitivity is our greatest asset. Ready for the next sprint?" I laughed and nodded. "Let's do it." Weeks later, we launched Dreamsies to a waitlist of 5,000 freelancers, journalists, gig economy workers, indie developers, people who needed mental health support, but lacked corporate backing. On launch day, the app saw 12,000 downloads in 24 hours. Notifications pinged with gratitude. Your mood logging prompt stopped my panic attack. I shared a gratitude circle with my team, and finally felt connected. "Thank you for caring." I read each message at my kitchen table, the sunrise painting the room gold. Mark slid in beside me, a second mug of coffee in hand. "Looks like sensitivity scales," he said, voice warm. I smiled, heart full. "It really does." We clinked mugs, toasting our improbable partnership. He, the skeptic turned believer. I, the too sensitive coder who proved empathy could drive product market fit. As the city came alive outside, I realized something profound. In a world obsessed with hard metrics, the soft data of human experience was the ultimate differentiator. And so long as we honored that, there would always be room for sensitivity, for well-being, and for tech that truly serves the mind.